Hey guys, welcome back to Mo's Game Table. Today we're going to do an AAR on the Baltap scenario from Nato, The Cold War Goes Hot. As you can see, I've got the game set up on the table, so I decided to take some pictures and take some notes and share with you the narrative as it unfolded over the course of the scenario. To set the stage, the Baltap command is a special command created by NATO in order to keep the Soviet Baltic fleet in the Baltic. If Denmark falls, the Baltic fleet can then transit out to the Atlantic and play all sorts of havoc with the NATO shipping. So it's a really crucial part for NATO to defend. And the key to successfully conquering Denmark is to conquer Copenhagen. We see the 7th Guard Air Mobile now transiting in, and each of these units is going to roll against the interception table, and they're all going to successfully land as you see the aircraft then peeling off and heading back to the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, at the same time, the Baltic Command Marines are going to do the exact same thing. They're going to launch their amphibious assault. They're going to have to roll and see if they get in. In this instance, everybody gets in safely, and we've got the 7th Guards Air Mobile to the south of Copenhagen, the Marines to the north, and they're set up for a concentric attack, which we'll come back to shortly. And as the Copenhagen landings are underway, the Pact forces are going to cross the border and attack the West Germans that are going to be caught by surprise in Hex 2415. First thing they're going to do is prep the target with an airstrike, and it will be successful, which will disrupt both of the 6th Panzer Grenadier units in the Hex. NATO will respond in kind, and they'll call in their own airstrike on the 16th Guards tanks, and that will be successful, disrupting that unit as well. All right, so now we go back up north for the big attack in Copenhagen. And this is where I made my first mistake of the game, and I think this is a mistake other people are probably going to nod their head and say, yeah, I've done that. You see that Baltic Corps headquarters, that 2 in parentheses is actually the support range, not a combat factor, or an attack factor. I added it as the attack factor. So I took what would have been a 12-2 attack into a 14-2, 7-1 odds. I caught it like a turn or two later, and at that point I was like, you know what, it's too far along. To hell with it. I'm just going to roll with it as is. As Kev always says, roll dice. So, hey, we're here to have fun. That's exactly what I did. But the big thing here is the concentric attack. Concentric attacks against these big targets are real important because Copenhagen is a major city. It gets a 2-column shift left. The concentric attack allows a 2-column shift right. So that big defense value of the major cities gets negated with that 2-column shift right. Being that this is the first turn, I get a 1-column shift right as well for surprise, and that turns the 7-1 into an 8-1. I roll a 4, and it gives you a D2 and an A1. The D2 causes the city to fall. The A1 result can be ignored because of the D2 result, and now the Soviets have conquered Copenhagen in the opening salvo. And the Marines move into Copenhagen both to defend the city as well as deploy out of there because it is a port city. And the Marines are going to be used in an amphibious assault later, which is why I put them there. While Copenhagen falls, we have the attack down south outside of Hamburg. We've got the Pact is going to attack with all 6 divisions on the 2 Panzer Grenadiers that are in 2415. This is also going to be a flanking attack. Now, the 16 Guards, they've already been attacked and disrupted. That's going to cut their attack factor by half. So instead of 10, it's going to be 5. Likewise, the 6 Panzer Grenadiers in 2415, they've been disrupted, and that's going to cut their defense value in half. Instead of 6, it'll be 3. They're in the clear, so they don't get any terrain bonuses, so it is going to be a 31-3. They're definitely going to get their ass kicked, and that's exactly what happens here. You do get a column shift right for the flank attack, but it doesn't matter because you're already at 10-1. And I roll a 6, which is D2R2, and both LJ units are just giant smoking holes in the ground. At that point, the remaining NATO forces recognize the fact that they're overwhelmed and outgunned, and they just decide to bug out, create some time and space, and head to Flensburg, hunker down there. And at this point, the Warsaw Pact is halfway to winning the scenario. They took Copenhagen. That's half the victory points that they need. They only need to now take 2 of the minor cities inside of Denmark. You also can see that the Danish territorial forces have been deployed. The British 5th Para are going to be coming onto the map as well. And also the other thing is at the end of the turn, the Baltic Command and the 7th Guards that did the assault on Copenhagen, the Baltic Command has to check to see if they're in combat supply. They're successful in their resupply effort. So they're resupplied, and by being resupplied, they also resupply the 7th Guard. Because remember, in this game, you have 2 major supply issues you got to worry about. Movement supply and combat supply. Movement supply, we'll see later an issue with that, but combat supply, after you engage in combat, you're going to be out of your combat load. So you're going to need to make sure that you reload to be able to have a combat in the future. And speaking of supply, the Baltic Front headquarters is going to entrain and use rail movement to land just outside of Schwerin. NEGF is going to be bugging out down south, so Baltic Front will be handling all of the logistic concerns for the Soviet forces going forward. Next up is the air and sea movement segment. Esbjerg is completely undefended, making it a highly desirable target for the motivated 76 Guards Air Mobile Divisions just chomping at the bit to get in the fight. They heard what went on with the 7th Guards. They took Copenhagen, so they want to make sure that they get one of the victory locations, Esbjerg. They're really motivated to get in there. They make their rolls, and they successfully all land, and they set themselves up also for a concentric attack. The Soviets begin their move up the neck into Denmark and stop just short of Flensburg. And you've got the 6th Panzer Grenadier units that are hunkered down inside of the city of Flensburg. The armor units there are going to be ineffective. They know that. The Warsaw Pact units do. Armor units attacking into a city attack at half value. So what they're going to do is they're going to say, to heck with it, we're going to bypass these guys. No point in dealing with them. They've got follow-on units, some mech forces and stuff that can kind of maybe tie those guys up if they want to or get involved, try to flush them out of the city. But it's not really important. They have to get across the border. They got to get into Denmark and get 2 of the minor cities there. That is the goal of this. They got to keep their eyes on the prize. So that's what they're doing. They're bypassing them, but they're going to get themselves into some trouble because they're going to put themselves out of movement supply. You can see here now the Soviet forces are way further away from their headquarters than they can be. NEGF is going to be coming out of the fight anyway. They can't logistically support them. Baltic Front headquarters can't either. Even when they detrain and they move, they're going to be way beyond their supply range. So now, at this instance, they've pushed so hard, and they have to try to get in here and get these victory locations, that they're going to be out of movement supplies. So their movement is going to be halved, which is going to slow their progress down here over the next couple turns. And the other thing you'll notice here is that the Danes have chosen to heavily fortify the other cities. They recognize Esbjerg is going to fall, so what they need to do now is just hunker down and protect all the other cities. Make sure that that one last city does not fall to the Warsaw Pact, because then the scenario is over. Knowing this, the Warsaw Pact wants to end this turn, so they launch an amphibious assault up north in Aalborg, and it is successfully landed, but now they've got to contend with actually making the amphibious assault into the city and taking the location, which is not going to be easy. Before that, though, we've got to make sure that we get the next victory location, which is Esbjerg. They roll a 3. They're successful. So after Esbjerg falls, the 237th Guards move in to defend the city, and the last reports coming out of there are that there are a bunch of Soviet soldiers walking around the city in search of Walkman and Men at Work tapes. And we'll see how that works out for them. So the Aalborg Amphibious Attack is next. First thing that the Marines are going to do is they're going to launch an airstrike against 2nd Jutland. They're going to be inside of a city, the Jutland unit is. That is going to give you a -1 on your die roll. They're also in enemy airspace. You are outside of 5 hexes from your nearest city-controlled hex. So that's going to be another -1. So now you're at -2. Your roll is a 5. You get the -2. It brings it down to a 3. And D1 is a result. This is a 1-step unit, so the 2nd Jutland is destroyed. That will leave the 2 territorials in there and that space, so their total defense factor is 2. But they are in a city, so that doubles them. So the Marines are feeling pretty decent right now. They knocked out a couple of units. They only got 2 to deal with. And they've committed to battle, as you see with the battle marker there. The interesting thing is that JBG unit in 717, just outside the city, they can react into the city to defend, being that now the Warsaw Pact is committed to the attack, which is what they're going to do. So now it is 6 attack factors for the Marines, and then you have originally 2 defense factors for the territorials. Now you'll double that up to 2 because the other JBG unit, so now it's 4. They're inside a city. It is now 8. So it's pretty interesting how those reactions can easily swing things in a different way. So the attack is going to be a 1-1 with a column shift left because they're in the city. So now they're going to be attacking at a 1-2, and it's going to be costly for the Soviets. The roll is a 3, which is an A1 asterisk. That means that they're going to lose 1 step, so 1 Marine division is destroyed. Everyone else at that point is going to be disrupted. That also puts the Marines out of combat supply, but there is a notional airlift attempt that you can do, which I did. The resupply was a success, so now they are back in combat supply, and the Baltic Corps disruption will come off at the end of the turn, and then we're going to move on to turn 3. At the start of the turn, the Baltic Front Headquarters is going to detrain, and they're going to jump into the action, try to get up the neck to get within supply range to help these Soviet units, but it's just not going to work out. And in the air and sea segment, we're going to bring in the British infantry to our house via air. That's going to join the British 5th Power, which are already there. And seeing that the Warsaw Pact forces are moving towards our house, NATO wants to kind of get the jump and reinforce it. So they're going to bring the 1st and 3rd Jutland over there via ship. The 1st Jutland makes it through the air cover, but the 3rd Jutland is not as lucky. Both them and the boat go to the bottom of the ocean. And now the NATO forces have lost one of their naval transports. And as the Warsaw Pact forces continue the march on our house, they're going to prep the target. They're going to strike in our house to go after the 1st Jutland there. And remember, airstrikes in a city, it's going to be a -1 DRM. However, there's no other negative DRM because they are not in enemy airspace. They're in contested airspace. So only the one negative DRM will be a roll of 6. It'll give you a -1. That'll be a roll of 5. It's a D1 asterisk, which is going to destroy the 1st Jutland. So they made it across the water under fire, only to die in place in our house. And the NATO response to that will be an airstrike on the advancing 16 Guard tanks. Their roll is a 1, so there's no effect. It's a swing and a miss by NATO, which really did not have good rolls for me in this game. Now the U.S. reinforcements attempt to land at our house. But again, a strong pack presence there puts them on the bottom. So now they have lost the other naval transport as well as another unit to the Warsaw Pact air. All right, so we're going to fast forward now to the end, which is going to be, I believe, turn 7. It took a few turns to get everybody over because they were out of movement supply, and I wanted to make sure everybody was set up for this big dramatic concentric attack. I didn't worry about running out the Dane units to try to engage them because I knew that the Soviets were just going to continue on and ignore them. I just wanted to see how this would all play out with a big concentric attack here at the end. The first thing they're going to do is prep the target. They're going to launch an airstrike against the British LJ unit that is inside. Their roll is a 3. You get a -1 DRM because it's in a city. It ends up at 2, which means that they're disrupted. So they go from a 2 defense down to a 1 defense, which is pretty good because now it would have been, otherwise it would have been a 4 defense for that unit alone in the city with the 2 for the other unit, which would have made the 6 defense and then 7 when you add the inherent defense value of the city itself. So instead now it drops it down to a 5 because now you've taken out that double. So you've got 1 each for the 2 units there. That doubles to 4. And then you have the 1 on the city, so now you're at 5. Attacking wise, you remember the armor units attacking into a city, they're cut in half. So you got 14 attack factors for the Soviet units, and that's going to be knocked down to a 7. You got the mech units, which will give you another 12. So now you're at 19. 19 to 5 is going to be 3 to 1. So that 3 to 1 odds now becomes 2 to 1 because of the 1 column shift left because it's in the city. The roll is a 6, and it result is a counterattack D1R1. Rolled on the counterattack table, it was no effect, and then the defender loses 1 and they retreat 1. The retreat 1 can be ignored because they're in the city, so in the end, 1 lone unit, the 5th para, holds on and keeps our house from the Soviet onslaught, and that is the end of the scenario, and they barely hold on, but they do. And it went all the way to the end, and I probably could have done some things differently. I definitely should, and I'll explore them again as I play it a few other times. But I thought this was a really interesting scenario, and what looks like pretty much a cakewalk for the Warsaw Pact, it turns out that's not the case. I mean, you look at these little Danish territorial units, and you're like, they're not really that tough. Well, they're actually tougher than you think, but on top of that, it's the way the defense works in the cities, the DRMs, the column shifts, they work in favor of both sides, and I just think it's a lot of fun. This is a fantastic game, and if you've not gotten it yet, I strongly recommend you do if you love operational games, especially anything modern/hypothetical World War III. This is definitely a game to get because this one is going to be around for a long time. It's got a lot of longevity, a lot of replayability. You're going to continually learn different things each time you play, and you're going to be able to replay the scenarios over and over because they're not going to play out the same way every time. So definitely a lot of fun here. Really enjoying this game and having a lot of fun with it. Hope you guys enjoyed this little AAR. I've never done this before, a little video AAR, so I decided to kind of throw some notes down and put it together. I already figured out a couple ways I can improve that as well. Hopefully you guys were entertained and enjoyed this and maybe even found it a little useful. If you have any comments or questions on this game, please post them down below, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next time.